Hey everybody, Kale here. Welcome back to the channel. And for those who are joining for the first time, thanks for being here. So as you can see, we're in a little bit different location than we normally are, just the way that the cookie crumbled today. And we're also shifting things up a bit. You know, change and evolution is a continuous process, as I'm sure you are well aware. And I will admit that at times I have been insecure around how often I switch things up or move into a next thing. And, sometimes there's something for me to sit with there, but I've also discovered that um, it's a positive thing. And I think a lot of times there can be a judgment from others or a fear of judgment internally or even self-judgment around how frequently we can shift. And the insecurity for me has been of, oh man, I'm going to look so like undisciplined and flighty and inconsistent and unreliable and like I don't have a clue what's going on. And I've had to learn for myself that in fact, it's the opposite a lot of the time. That to be able to detect when something has shifted, to detect when something is no longer right or true, or when something else is seeking to emerge, and to be able to let go and release the former thing and say yes to the new thing, is actually a very disciplined act and a courageous one at that, given, you know, what we ourselves are holding on to or the fear of how we may be perceived by others, and to trust that truth and to move forward in it. And so for that, for anyone who has ever felt similarly to me, or perhaps they find themselves or you find yourself perhaps even judging others around that, and that there's just I don't know, there's something else that's available. So we're shifting on this channel a bit. That will make itself known, and just the kind of the orientation, a little bit of how I do things. It's continuing to evolve as I continue to show up and put this out. So here we are. So on that, let me set the scene here a little bit for us in the moment of this recording that I find myself in. So we have a full moon tonight, and full moons are all about releasing and letting go and illumination, illuminating fears and the subconscious and subconscious fears, um, illuminating truth, okay, and thus giving us an opportunity to confront that truth and to sit with what's ours, and ourselves and what we're really feeling, okay. And this particular full moon is very special because it's coinciding with the first night of Pesach or Passover, which is traditionally an 8-day Jewish holiday, but esoterically and Kabbalistically is available. It's an energy portal, as has been said, that anyone can actually participate in, regardless of spiritual affiliation or religious affiliation, and that it's here for us in the cosmos during this time. And so that this time, this 8-day portal is about moving from bondage or limitation into freedom and liberation. Okay, and it's a liberation from Mitzrayim, which is Hebrew for Egypt. Kabbalistically, it's not like the literal Egypt. It's actually more representative of again, ego, limitation, and selfishness, or like, yeah, or selfish desire, and that we're freeing ourselves from that. And I'm mindful to be kind to the ego, in that the ego is very helpful, and it's often plays into fear, and its job is to protect us, and our role is to befriend the ego and befriend these fears, and allow it to know that it's safe, and it doesn't quite have to operate in the same way as it once did, and to allow ourselves to go through that integration process. Um, that said, it is still very much an opportunity to transform, and specifically, it talks about transforming like the negativity, and chaos, and darkness in our lives, and to be able to transform that into something that is positive and freeing, and perhaps allows for less chaos and more order, um, and yeah, it's a spiritual liberation. Let's see, did I miss anything there? And a couple things, which are that it says it's an opportunity to break the dominion of negativity and chaos in one's life, and therefore the world, transforming consciousness and lived expression and lived experience from bondage into spiritual liberation. Okay, and lastly, that Pesach means the mouth tells, and so there's an allowing here of one to be able to share their story, to recalibrate consciousness, and express their vision. Okay, so I love that. I love that this is where we find ourselves on this full moon, um, and so we've got this extra energy of releasing and letting go and freedom. Um, in Especially in those very like in internal ways, and then that can translate into those external ways. So on that note, the main card that I want to focus on today is the first card that was pulled, which is our Nine of Swords. Okay, we've got a Nine of Swords. All right, and the overall theme that we're really sinking into is around alignment, and the necessity and importance of alignment, and also alongside that, um, non-forcing. Okay, and so as we pull this card, all right, and we this is the card of rumination. Okay, and you can see these bees here are representing thoughts, and I'm going to just read the poem that is associated with this card. Okay, so I just got to flip to it here. So we get, my head's a hive of wasps who sting, swords and pain the shadows bring. Calm the mind to cultivate rest and peace, only then will you find release. And I love that release aspect, given that it's the full moon, given that we're moving into this portal that is all about liberation. All right. And when it says swords and pain, the shadows bring, I find it interesting because, again, it says that the wasps are are like in the head. The wasps are the thoughts, right? Like the bombardment, the rumination, the obsessive thinking, going over a thing again and again, perhaps um, seeking over justifying, like justification, and seeking that understanding, and trying to figure it out, and defending oneself, improving, and just whatever these, whether it's a situation, a relationship, a conflict, a solution, whatever's going on up here, right? This over and over and over again is happening. Okay, and that but that these are the wasps. It's not these that are the painful. It says that the swords and the pain the shadows bring. All right, and the swords here are thought cycles, thought patterns. Okay, it's perception, it's mental structure. Okay, the Nine of Swords, nines are completion. So what this is saying to me, that this is the completion of a thought cycle, the completion of a mental structure, a completion of a certain way of perceiving something. All right, and so we've got that the swords are perhaps bringing pain because we're nearing the completion of this particular cycle, and there's some pain and turmoil, some mental anguish that's coming about with this, at this completion, with this completion. All right. And also see how we've got this horizon here. We've got a sunset happening. There's a transition that is taking place. Okay. And there's an invitation here to say yes to this transition. And perhaps it's the transition, it's the change itself, right, that might be bringing up these thoughts. Okay, that might be the struggle of what you're confronting, whether you're resisting it, you don't want it to happen. You're freaked out by it, and you've got all of these worries and thoughts going on inside because of this transition of what's calling forth. And I would say that this change here, this invitation into the sunset here, is alignment itself speaking. It's that new thing. It's that thing that's the most true for you. And so again, we go back to the swords and pain the shadows bring. And again, so what's bringing these thoughts, right? What's bringing the thoughts that ends up manifesting as like an attack on the mind? Um, what's hidden in the shadows here? You see, we've got something here hidden in the shadows. Okay, and it's what's hidden in the shadows that are bringing the swords and the pain. It's what's hidden in the shadows that's creating this thought cycle and these loops. Okay, it could be creating the guilt or the shame, right? It's the fear, and I think about our shadow selves. I think about what we spoke about with the full moon being the illumination of the subconscious, and it's like, what are we repressing? Whether it's, we don't want to look at it. It's a part of ourselves that maybe we judge, or we think is a very negative aspect of ourselves, that we either reject or we try to hide away. Or perhaps it's just simply a part of ourselves that actually isn't negative, but we're afraid to be it. We're afraid to express it. We're afraid of what other people think. We're ashamed, and we're fearful of letting that out. And so we've rejected this part of ourselves that's also part of the shadow self. The shadow self is not just negative aspects of self. It's also just the parts of ourselves that we reject in general, positive or negative, if we're going to put those words to it. Okay, and so the word that comes to mind there is also polarity, and the acceptance of that inner duality, right, and integrating that, and being with that nuance, and again being able to integrate that whole self a little bit more. Okay, and so whatever that truth is, whatever that alignment is, there's some aspect here that's perhaps that perhaps is being resisted. And in fact, well, I'm just noting that comes up in another card. Yes, how interesting. I was going to save this until the end, but it's coming up in this moment, so we're going to go with it. We did have an Ace of Pentacles in reverse, and a reverse of the Ace of Pentacles suggests that you're holding back when something wants to emerge. Okay, again, we've got this change and transition here, so what's calling? What's speaking to you around what wants to emerge? All right, and so this is trusting that. This is saying yes to your alignment. And again, from previous readings, we know that the Justice card reminds us that that truth and alignment bring consequence. It's not all rainbows and butterflies when we step into full authenticity and we're true with ourselves in the moment. Okay, and that brings about things that might cause that rumination and the bombardment of thoughts, and it's perhaps the ego is protecting a little bit there, and what would it look like to know that in fact that this change, this transition is in fact safe. And not only that, but we look at this card in upright, and we've got a home. What if this transition here that's marked by the sunset is the same transition of walking through the arches and making your way back home? Saying yes to this transition, knowing, again, this is the Pentacles. Pentacles is everything in the physical world, knowing that all is held, like the whole world being held in the palm of a hand, right? And that there's safety in that, and there's trusting that alignment, and that in fact it is alignment that breeds freedom. Okay, it is alignment that brings freedom and brings expansion. And on the back of that, what we had next was our Strength card, and this is the card of power. Okay, this is the card of power, and it's also the card of mastery, the mastery of instinct, mastering instinct. Okay, and so what that says to me is, well, one, you do have the power to do this. You do have the capability. You do have the strength, and if you feel that you don't, to commune with whatever you commune with around support and experiencing the support that you need in order to move forward with this. Um, Again, it's that card of mastering instinct, and so again, there's trusting your instincts and trusting that alignment. Okay, it's communion with instinct and mastery through presence. We're going to go into that aspect in a moment, but as far as communion with instinct, to me, right, if communion is like a oneness, right, it's a union. There's a relationship here that's happening, and to me that feels harmonious and peaceful. And so if we have a harmonious and peaceful relationship with our instinct, which often whatever's disrupted our trust in self, and what we're feeling is the thing that can often get in the way. If we do trust our instinct and those feelings, and we feel into it, and then we act on what it is that we know, and what we feel, what is true and aligned for us, right? Um, that is what that is acting in alignment. That is synonymous with being in alignment, and then synonymous with that freedom and expansion. Okay, and so we have where it says mastery through presence, and this to me kind of opened up this conversation around power versus force. Again, this is the card of power, and um, power is in the stillness, in this knowing, and that power and like being in tune with that is what breeds alignment. It welcomes alignment, and then more alignment breeds more power, and so there's this nice giving and receiving, and like its own cycle of completion that occurs with that. Force, however, is a misaligned behavior or a misaligned action that breeds more misalignment. So if you're ever forcing something, or you're going against something, right? And that resistance comes back, and that I'm gonna read a little bit. Actually, I have a book called Power versus Force, and it's fantastic, by David Hawkins. But I was reminded of this particular part in this book. I'm glad I already had it bookmarked. That really speaks to this. Um, because again, that force can also go in the way of pushing, but also in the way of like suppressing and like holding back, right? I'm thinking about those, whatever we're oppressing, whatever we're not allowing out, that's also its own form of force. Okay, but to go a little bit deeper into that power versus force, I'm just going to read this little bit here. Okay, if we analyze the nature of force, it becomes readily apparent why it must always succumb to power. This is in accordance with one of the basic laws of physics. Because force automatically creates a counterforce, its effect is limited by definition. We could say that force is a movement. It goes from here to there, or tries to, against opposition. Power, on the other hand, stands still. It is like a standing field that does not move. Gravity itself, for instance, does not move against anything. Its power moves all objects within its field, but the gravity field itself does not move. Force always moves against something, whereas power does not move against anything. Force is intrinsically incomplete and therefore has to constantly be fed energy. Power is total and complete in and of itself and requires nothing from outside of itself. It makes no demands, it has no needs. Because force has an insatiable appetite, it constantly consumes. Power, in contrast, energizes, gives forth, supplies, and supports. Power gives life and energy. Force takes these away. We notice that power is associated with compassion and makes us feel positively about ourselves. Force is associated with judgmentalism and tends to make us feel badly about ourselves. Force always creates counterforce. Its effect is to polarize rather than to unify. Polarization is Polarization always implies conflict. Its cost, therefore, is always high. Because force incites polarization, it inevitably produces a win-lose dichotomy, and because somebody always loses, enemies are always created. Constantly faced with enemies, force requires constant defense. Defensiveness is invariably costly, whether in the marketplace, politics, or international affairs. And I would say, within personal affairs, right? Within our relationships and within our own personal dynamics. Okay, and so I look at this and again, thinking about constantly faced with enemies, force requires constant defense. And so I'm thinking here, right, with this barrage of attacks, right, these thought attacks, and this need to defend or justify or whatever is being trying to be figured out. Um, there's a force here that's happening that relates to rumination, and I'm wondering if there's space to like pause and like drop out of the rumination for a moment, which I know it can be much easier said than done, but to say like, wait, like if there's something here with this, like where am I forcing something? Where is something being forced that might be triggering the obsessive thoughts of the rumination? What am I not accepting, or what is misaligned that I'm forcing? And of course we always have to sit with all the feelings that come up in that, even within that alignment, but a worthy question to ask. And on the back of that, in terms of um, what we have to sit with alignment, another card that came through in the deck was the Two of Cups, and twos are polarity, okay, and cups are relational consciousness or the capacity to bond. And so recognizing here that sometimes, often with alignment, there is some type of um, challenge or truth telling or change that has to occur in some capacity internally for ourselves. That could represent an internal polarity, or like that internal relationship, that internal relational consciousness with self and capacity to bond with self, with our own instinct, right? And communing with our instinct. And also that can be external relationship or other situations. And what can often appear, um, and it seems like in a way it's associated with force, this like win-lose dichotomy, etc. But the reality is, when it comes to alignment and it comes to, again, that stillness and that gentle and kind power, that true power that is soft and not forceful, that comes with alignment, even though there may be a hardship, or it might appear like someone or both people are losing because of the pain of what comes from that alignment. Well, there's pain that's from the misalignment, but even stepping into alignment can breed even more pain, but it's the thing that has to be done, and it's the necessary thing to be aligned. The reality is that it's actually a win for both people. Okay, and again, it doesn't always appear that way on the surface, or doesn't always feel that way, but the reality is alignment is a win, and that is going to be alignment for both people, regardless of the feelings that are had. Okay, and the poem that's associated with this card is, I believe it's here, just kidding, it's here. Deep devotion calms the soul, broken hearts are soon made whole, raised cups carry a lover's lips, who returns your potent kiss? And what stands out to me again are like the broken hearts are soon made whole. And that is the reality that moving into alignment can definitely be heartbreaking. Can be heartbreaking for one or both people. And broken hearts are soon made whole, because that alignment is restoration. That alignment is the access door to healing. That alignment breeds freedom and liberation of mind, body, soul, heart, spirit. There is something there, and that is for both people. It's for both people, regardless of whichever side you find yourself on the receiving of something you don't want to change, or on the making the move and the thing that's hard to do, and maybe you don't want it to change, but it's just what it is. Because at the end of the day, it's ultimately going to be in the highest good for both people. And somewhere deep inside, it is what you both would want, because like the deepest part of you, I believe the deepest part of you desires alignment full and completely. And so we don't always, like, in our minds we don't always agree with what that is per se, but I do believe a part of us and a deep part of us does know. And so that's how we know we're going to be okay. That's how we know we're going to be okay. And it can be painful, and um, it's helpful for us and it's helpful for our path. Okay, yeah. This card also begs the question of what is truly in resonance. Okay, and so there's an emphasis here on that, and the fact that it says deep devotion calms the soul. There's an invitation, I believe, to really devote oneself to alignment, to resonance, and to say yes to the things that collapse, the things that are meant to move through and be released, and the excitement upon which the collapse and that particular rubble or those ashes, the fertile soil that the collapse brings, to have new life and to rebuild and to have something new and more aligned take its place. Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot here for us, per usual. And just going to sit for a moment and see if there's anything else. Yes. So I do have a reminder that I have a couple decks, and I'm feeling inspired to make those available for this 8-day portal, to make those available free of charge or donation based, whatever you feel called towards. And those two decks are going to be the Trust Attunement Affirmation deck and the Liberation Light Code deck. And the Trust Attunement deck has 22 statements that have a very intentional, energetic charge to them, and there's instructions on how to use it. And there's an attunement image that I invite you to use prior to really attune with that energy, and it is there to serve as a reminder of what trust, a felt sense of trust, what trust can feel like in the body, and what alignment can feel like in the body. And sometimes, even those statements that come in, and again, especially if we have an open body and a fertile mind for it, um, it can almost be this like cross check between different situations where it's like, okay, wait, I'm saying this statement, and like, how does this, is this in resonance with that or not? It can be also really helpful. And so there's 22 statements there, and then there's also the Liberation Light Code deck, which is also state that there are statements, and there are 18 statements in that deck, and attuned to the frequency of liberation. And there's an image there, again, for an attunement image. Those are not on the preview, like when you're on my stand store. The attunement image itself is not provided. That's like after you actually download it. But you'll see other examples of what's there for both of those. For example, one of them that comes to mind is I am one with the thread that liberates me. And sinking into the reality of what that is, and recognizing that there is a thread inside of us that is a thread of liberation that can allow for this unraveling of whatever is feeling entangled, and allow for the creation of greater space and expansion within heart, body, and mind, and allow for that process of integration. And um, again, just as a support, as a reminder. And so those two decks are available. I find them applicable to this reading and to this time, specifically to this portal. Um, if you feel called and it feels aligned to give a donation, fantastic, great. I am in receptive mode to that. And if it feels like this is a moment for you to receive a gift, I invite you to receive it. If this feels like a moment of, like, I wish I could give something here, but it's just, it's compressing you, and it's compressing your nervous system, and you don't have that available. Receive it, receive the gift, and allow yourself to have that. And if things change another point, the donation's always there. But again, I really I want this to be whatever feels aligned for you and whatever feels most receptive for you. Um, it's available as an additional support during this portal. So I leave that for you, and to know I'm always here as I can be for a support. I do have those readings, individual readings, where basically you're going to get a video that would be like this, but it's channeled specifically for you. And we go very deep in those. They tend to be 50 minutes to an hour, sometimes a little bit more. Um, and it's something that you get to watch as often as you want, and people have reflected back that they enjoy that they can return to it, and it can be a continued support over the coming weeks and months as they traverse through whatever they're traversing through. Um, so sometimes these things, like, they have immediate things that you can shift and you'll see immediate effects, and then there's other things that are a longer journey and it's a much longer integration process. And so know that that's available, and I'm working on some other offerings as well, and I will make note when that is, and what that is, when it comes to fruition. Okay, so feel free to check back. Maybe it'll be there by the time I post this reading. Otherwise, I'll make a note and probably a little post or something like that. So, okay, friends, as always, oh, and please do, if you did resonate with this, if you got something out of this, it really helps a ton if you could like it, just because it lets the algorithm know to keep sending it out and let other people become aware of this. Comments are always appreciated. You know, please no force. But if you feel inspired to drop a note around anything or something or your own experience or thoughts, I gladly welcome that. So, okay, I think that's all, y'all. uh, Enjoy this full moon to the best of your ability, and this energy portal, and for those who that it's in resonance for, Hag Pesach Sameach, and we are complete. See you later.